Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the fourth episode of Diplomatically Speaking With. My name is Zaim Mozani, and as always, I will be the host of this DSW. As you might know by now, DSW is a series of interviews with the diplomatic corps in Malaysia. For each DSW, we'll be talking about the history, context, and opportunities of the bilateral relations between foreign nations and Malaysia. DSW is brought to you by KSI Strategic Institute for Asia Pacific, KSI for short, and KSI is a top-ranked public policy think tank based in Malaysia, and I am KSI's Director of External Relations. KSI is an independent think tank with a vision to build better nations in Asia Pacific. Today, we are diplomatically speaking with the Ambassador of Finland to Malaysia, His Excellency Mr. Sami Leino, on everything Finland-Malaysia relations. Ambassador, how are you?
Hello, Zaim. Thanks, I'm doing fine, and thank you very much for having me here. It's great to join you on this distinguished series of interviews.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, let me kick off the session with a simple question. Tell us more about your background and your appointment as Ambassador of Finland to Malaysia.
Thanks. Well, I'm serving as the Ambassador of Finland to Malaysia since 1st September last year. I was appointed to this post by the President of Finland. This is my first ambassadorial posting, and I'm, of course, deeply honored to have this responsibility and possibility to serve my country this way and represent my country. I think you could easily say that serving as an ambassador is the highlight of any diplomatic career, and of course it's also a big responsibility. Before coming to Malaysia, I worked for 6 years at the Foreign Ministry in Helsinki as head of the unit for Southeast Asia and East Asia, so I'm somewhat familiar with the region and knew Malaysia from before as well. I'm a career diplomat. I have been serving the Foreign Ministry, I think altogether about 22 years in various roles. I'm one of those you could maybe call a generalist. We are a small diplomatic service. That means that many of our people are doing many kinds of things. We do not specialize so much. So I've also been working with many different kinds of issues ranging from political affairs to security policy, trade promotion, trade policy, and so on. And my previous overseas postings have included Moscow in Russia, The Hague in the Netherlands, Brussels in Belgium, as well as Vienna. And I'm really honored and pleased to be having the possibility to serve as an ambassador to Malaysia. And Malaysia was really one of my top wishes on the list when I was asked, where would you like to go? And I think there are many reasons for that. I could give you a long list. Of course, I really feel that, and I've seen that Malaysia is a nation rich with diversity, modernity, and natural beauty. It's also a very fascinating posting, thinking about we are in the middle, that Malaysia is situated in the middle of the Southeast Asia region, which is growing in strategic importance and economical importance all the time with huge growth potential. I think you would really say that Malaysia is a country in the crossroads of civilizations. We will be talking a lot about our bilateral relations longer on, but of course, from a diplomat's point of view, there are many things going on between our countries, and I do believe that Malaysia is always also a very interesting posting for a diplomat. Well, to be quite frank, of course, it has been a bit of a challenging first year for me here in Malaysia. It has been a challenging year in Finland and almost any other parts of the world because of the COVID, but I and my family, we have enjoyed our time here in Malaysia very much. I've been deeply impressed by the beauty of Malaysia and kindness of the people, and I do look very much forward to the day when I can actually visit more places of beautiful Malaysia. So far it has, because of the COVID, been a little bit limited, and I also very much look forward to having real live meetings and meeting more people. I think we are all a little bit tired of virtual meetings by this, and of course, if I would have to name one highlight of my time here so far, it has without doubt been the presentation of my credentials as the Ambassador of Finland on 8th December last year to His Royal Highness Berto Anagon. It was a great honor to have the opportunity to meet His Royal Highness and the Queen, despite the many challenges which are brought by the pandemic.
Fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing the journey, from serving in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also in Moscow, Hague, Brussels, Vienna, all the way to Malaysia. And it's good to know that Malaysia is top on your list. Always great to hear that, Ambassador. Now, Ambassador, what are your top 3 priorities as the Ambassador of Finland to Malaysia?
Well, of course, as an embassy, we represent the government of Finland in all sorts of matters in Malaysia. That ranges from, for example, trade policy or helping Finnish companies to cooperation between Finland and Malaysia in various fields, in bilateral issues or multilateral issues. Like many Finnish embassies, we are not very big when it comes to in terms of personnel. So we are more or less constantly under the pressure to prioritize our work. And of course, the range of issues we work with is really wide. Maybe you could say that you never really know what the day brings when you go to office in the morning, and sometimes you may have some plans what you plan to do, and something else comes up and it changes everything. But I think that's part of what makes a diplomat's job so fascinating. And we have, of course, several priorities for our work, priorities we agreed with our headquarters and the minister in Helsinki. But if I would have to name just 3, I would start by saying that, of course, promoting trade relations between Finland and Malaysia is clearly the top priority for me and the embassy. In particular, this means helping Finnish companies enter and access the Malaysian markets and informing of them of the many opportunities here for doing business. Of course, also strengthening bilateral relations and forms of cooperation and contacts at all levels between Finland and Malaysia is a key task. I don't mean only governments or official institutions, but all aspects of our societies, universities, companies, and civil society. I think people-to-people contacts are in particular dear to me, and I look very much forward to deepening them as well. Of course, third priority could maybe be taking care of the interests and safety of Finnish citizens in Malaysia. We do not have any exact statistics about Finns living in Malaysia because before the pandemic, especially many young people just came and went. But our figures is that we have several hundred of Finns living here. And in particular, thinking about the times of COVID and last year, this was helping them in various situations was of course a top priority for me. Well, these were maybe just 3 priorities, but of course, like any embassy, we are also closely following the developments in Malaysia, including political and economical issues, business environment, and regional issues as well. And we report regularly about this to Helsinki. We do also Finland promotion, if you can use that word. We tell about Finland, Finnish culture and society in Malaysia. And we as an embassy, we really are the gateway to Finland. So we daily work with Malaysians and Finns and others to tell about them and also about Finland more. And as any embassy, I think in this part of the world, in Southeast Asia, we are also trying to keep a regional approach to regional eye and see what's happening in the wider Southeast Asian region. Of course, this applies to South China Sea or ASEAN, for example.
Thank you, Ambassador. So if I can quickly recap, I love the fact that you mentioned that because of the wide-ranging issues that you have to work with, it makes your job fascinating as a diplomat. The top 3 priorities, and indeed there's more you mentioned. The first is on trade relations between Malaysia and Finland by connecting companies both on both sides of the world. Diplomatic relations, connecting companies, universities, civil society, and people relations between Finland and Malaysia. You mentioned about consular services, helping Finnish people in Malaysia, especially during the pandemic. You mentioned about Finland promotion, promoting Finnish culture and society to Malaysia on a daily basis. And lastly, you mentioned about regional engagements, specifically when it comes to ASEAN, Southeast Asia region, and also issues such as the South China Sea. You mentioned sort of this point, which I think is very interesting. One of the reasons why we do this interview in the first place is because we want to understand other countries, and in this case, understanding Finland, because Finland, when you Google Finland and Malaysian relations, you can't find much. And I think this is why we have you today with this interview. I want to ask a question about history. if you can, can you tell us about the historical ties between Finland and Malaysia?
Yeah, sure. Well, I would like to say that the relations between our countries, they are quite long-standing. We established official diplomatic relations already in 1973, and Finland has had a resident ambassador in Kuala Lumpur since 1988, I think so. That makes, I think I'm the eighth resident ambassador here in Kuala Lumpur, and our relations have always been excellent. And from the beginning, Finland has seen Malaysia as an important partner in this region. Of course, during the years, we have had several high-level visits and events, and you could mention several examples of significant events in our relations. But maybe if you think from the Finnish perspective, of course, one of the highlights in this regard has maybe been the visit of President Ahtisaari to Malaysia in 1995. And in more general, when you think about Finnish-Malaysian relations, I think we have a lot of common in respect the way we conduct foreign relations and what are our guiding principles for foreign relations. Both Finland and Malaysia, we have all the time or consistently been very staunch supporters of the rules-based multilateral cooperation, multilateralism, and the United Nations system. I think one example of the commitment of our countries to these issues is the participation in UN peacekeeping missions, where both of our countries have had quite a significant participation over the years. And I was very much impressed by this when I had the great honor and pleasure of visiting the Malaysian Peacekeeping Center last May and hearing about the Malaysian history in UN peacekeeping and other peacekeeping missions. Maybe in this context, you could mention that both our countries are also candidates to UN Human Rights Council for the term of 2022-24, and the elections for this will be held this autumn. And of course, human rights in general are a cornerstone of Finnish foreign policy, and some of our priorities include the rights of women and children, as well as the rights of people with disabilities and also indigenous people. And I'm pleased to say that we've always had a very good dialogue and cooperation about also these issues with Malaysian counterparts. Both Finland and Malaysia are also very strong proponents of regional cooperation and integration. Malaysia is, of course, a founding member of ASEAN, and Finland is a member of the European Union since 1995. And yet again, thinking about our relations and looking back into history, I would like to say that commercial relations have always been a priority for the Finnish embassy here in Kuala Lumpur, and as well as the Malaysian embassy in Helsinki as well. This is, of course, owing also to Malaysia's strategic location and open market environment, which I already touched upon earlier. And as said, these offer many possibilities for Finnish companies as well.
Thank you for the elaboration. I take note of you mentioned that there's long-standing relations between Finland and Malaysia. Formerly, the formal relations established in 1973, presidential ambassador in 1988, which actually talks. You can see there's a long history between the two countries, and then you even mentioned the commercial relations go beyond what the formal diplomatic relations. It's interesting to note that you mentioned about the visit in 1995 by the President of the Republic of Finland, which I believe was a state banquet hosted by our Yang Dipertuan Agong in 1995, which was a historical moment for both countries. You mentioned about upholding rules-based multilateralism, cooperation on human rights, and regional cooperation and engagement, which is important for both countries. And I think to note also, you mentioned about the regional cooperation between Malaysia and Finland, with Malaysia being a member of ASEAN and Finland being a member of the EU. And there are always mutual interest and collaboration between the two countries. Now, Ambassador, let me ask you about when we talk about the trade relations in the earlier segment today, you mentioned about helping Finnish companies entering the Malaysian markets under the trade relations. Could you elaborate more about the trade and economic relations between Finland and Malaysia?
Sure. Well, maybe I'll start by saying a couple of words about our relations in general. And as I've been saying a couple of times, the relations between our countries are very good, and trade is at the core of our relations. And I have only served as 1 year as the ambassador here in Malaysia, and as I was saying, the COVID has a little bit affected my plans and operations in these very exceptional circumstances. But I have been very, very pleased and also like touched by the interest of I've noted the interest on the Malaysian side and to strengthen our ties and cooperation, and also of course there's a growing interest on the Finnish side also to develop our cooperation and not to sound too diplomatic or not to repeat too many times how excellent our relations are, but like I do have to say that I also feel that there's still room for improvement. Although our relations are excellent, and Finland and Malaysia, we really do not have any sensitive or complicated issues in our relations. I cannot think of any of those, and of course I'm sure that even if there would be one day some issues, we would always be able to have an open and frank dialogue as friends do. But as said, I feel that there's also the contacts between our countries at all levels could be a little bit closer as well, and I would like to see more cooperation in various areas. And I'm very much convinced that this would greatly benefit Finland and Malaysia. And when I think about my term as the ambassador of Finland here, I see my general mission as bringing our countries closer to each other despite the geographical distance. I want to activate our relations from grassroots level to the top. And would I really be able to achieve this during my probably 4 years here in Malaysia, I would be a very, very happy man. And of course, I'm ready to support or work with any initiative to achieve this goal. Making Finland better known in Malaysia and also increasing the knowledge of Malaysia and Malaysian opportunities in Finland is a key task for me. And I unfortunately have to say that some other Southeast Asian countries are much better known in Finland than Malaysia. But there's definitely a lot of potential in our closer cooperation and contacts. For example, I would like to mention the Finnish technological solutions relating to circular economy and renewable energy. I'm sure that this could be very, very, very useful also for Malaysian companies and stakeholders, and would also be useful and important for Malaysia in achieving the very commendable goals Malaysia has in these fields. And enhancing sustainability, of course, is these days a key goal for Finland as well as and Malaysia. So this is maybe about the overall context, but I'd be happy to continue more about the economic relations at this point, or what do you prefer?
Sure. Ambassador, thanks for the overview. And I think I like when you mentioned wanting to activate grassroots to top level engagements so we can have more businesses on both sides of the country. You also mentioned about Finland offering technological solutions for circular economy and sustainable development. Ambassador, if you could elaborate a little bit more on maybe the import exports between two countries, or potentially the number of the presence of Finnish companies in Malaysia, or potentially even the presence of Malaysian companies in Finland. So just to give our listeners and our viewers a little bit of context when it comes to the trade relations, I think that would be great.
Sure. Well, trade relations between our countries have been and had been developing very positively before the pandemic, and there's a lot of potential. I mentioned already the issues related to sustainability, clean technology, clean tech, but also in some of the other very promising sectors are digitalisation and IT. As you may know, Finland is one of the digitally most advanced countries in the world. I also see smart city solutions as being a very promising area, being related to, let it be health technology or harbour technology or something like that. And there are many possibilities and potential to do more in many sectors. And as I mentioned to you that I was working for a long time in the foreign ministry in the Asia department, and now having been here for a year, so I'm very happy to say that I've also noted the growing interest of Finnish companies towards Southeast Asia markets and Malaysia as well, despite the pandemic, which is of course affecting things. According to our info, there are at the moment about 40-45 Finnish companies operating in Malaysia. And of course, I very much would like to see the number growing after the pandemic. And our companies have traditionally valued the favorable business environment of Malaysia and the easiness of doing business here. And one aspect I hope to see a change in the future, which is maybe not so much reality at this point yet, but I would like to encourage and would like to see Finnish companies seeing Malaysia also as a gateway to the Southeast Asia markets more in the future. Some do already now, but there's also room for improvement there as well. And I mentioned that we have about 45 companies. There are all kinds of companies. These include major corporations and global actors, but also small companies and startups. And we at the Embassy and our Trade Promotion Office Business Finland, we work closely with these companies. And I think it has been true pleasure for me to get to know them and the work they're doing in Malaysia. And as said that our trade figures and bilateral trade has been developing quite positively for several years, although I'll have to say that the pandemic has unfortunately had a negative effect in this regard. And it's no surprise, of course, to nobody, but we have some preliminary figures about exports and imports for 2020, and according to our preliminary figures, the exports in goods from Finland to Malaysia in 2020 were about 165 million euros, and imports from Malaysia to Finland were about 300 million euros. There was a small decrease last year in the trade volume compared with 2019, but I would maybe like to say that this was more or less expected, taking into account the effect of COVID on both our economies. And you could even say that the situation in our bilateral trade could have been worse. And when you look at these figures and what is traded between our countries, of course, electronic appliances and components are the most prominent category in exports and imports. Of course, this relates to the fact that the manufacturing sector of Malaysia plays an important role in global value chains. Also for many high-tech products, also Finnish ones. And as I was saying, we see a lot of potential in developing our economic relations further. And part of the reason for this is that many of the fields Malaysia is investing at the moment are also the ones that Finnish companies have world-class products and innovations. I mentioned already digitalisation and smart cities, and I have to say that I've been really impressed by Malaysia's strong focus on digitalisation. And as said, Finland is very advanced in this field, so there are many possibilities for cooperation here. I mentioned already circular economy and also waste to energy solutions. We have had some very exciting meetings and talks with Malaysian counterparts in these fields, and there is a lot of demand for this in Malaysia. Some of the innovations of Finnish companies, I think, are very top class in this area. Of course, I would also, thinking about our economic relations, I would need to mention, I want to highlight the importance of education cooperation. And education is, of course, something that Finland is quite well known in Malaysia, our education system, and there's a lot of interest and demand for Finnish expertise. And pleased to note that there are many positive developments, and there are also many Finnish companies that are working in these fields in Malaysia. Probably the sectors I mentioned here, those are also the priority sectors where we focus our efforts at the moment in the embassy. But of course, we are also all the time trying to identify new opportunities for Finnish businesses. And I'm pleased to say that we also have very good contacts with the Malaysian embassy in Helsinki, and I have met Ambassador John Samuel many times, and I think we are on a joint mission to work for improving and intensifying bilateral relations and contacts. So that's also very, very promising.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. Such an interesting elaboration you mentioned. You mentioned about a lot of opportunities in growth when it comes to digitalization, smart city, specifically on health. You mentioned there are 45 companies of Finland based in Malaysia of various sectors and verticals. You mentioned that there are multinational corporations, SMEs, and also startups. You want the Finnish companies in Finland to see Malaysia as the gateway to the region, Southeast Asia. You mentioned that trade figures have suffered due to the pandemic, with the preliminary figures you mentioned about the exports slightly dipping, Malaysia and pro. You mentioned about education cooperation, and this is a point I think is very interesting because for the past 10 years or so since Malaysia designed the Malaysian education blueprint, Malaysia has looked to Finland as the role model when it comes to education development, and there has been a lot of engagements between Finland government and educators and Malaysian governments and our educators. So it's very interesting that you mentioned that sort of the education diplomacy between Malaysia and Finland. Very, very interesting stuff. Ambassador, I want to jump into another area of diplomacy, which is on cultural cooperation. Earlier you mentioned about wanting to promote Finland culture to Malaysians. Could you elaborate a little bit on this cultural cooperation?
Sure. I think cultural cooperation is a key element of our relations with Malaysia, and I personally have always seen cultural cooperation as being a very important part of diplomacy and bilateral relations to any country. And we have had I was studying before coming here, I was studying the history of our relations and what has been doing, and I'm very happy to say that I also noticed that we've had a lot of cultural exchanges and cooperation over the years in various areas. If I would like to give, if I would have to give one example, I think I would maybe mention from our perspective, of course, again, I would mention the 100th anniversary year of Finnish independence in 2018, which was celebrated with many concerts and exhibitions and art exhibitions also here in Malaysia. But yet again, of course, thinking about the current situation and our plans, I would unfortunately have to say that the pandemic has affected our plans and operations in this area as well. And events for promoting Finnish culture and physical visits of various groups and exchanges have, of course, been in practice, impossible to arrange. So we have had to move to explore various virtual formats for events and doing things in a virtual format. Our Independence Day we celebrate on 6th of December. So, for example, last year we celebrated our Independence Day in a virtual format with some kind of virtual celebration of music presentation, cultural things, and other program. These kind of events have been quite successful as such, but if let's be quite frank, of course they can never fully substitute visiting a country or participating in a one event 100%. And we sincerely look forward to being able to hopefully in a not too distant future to provide more opportunities for Malaysian and Finnish people to learn from each other's culture, society, and arts. Looking into the future, in 2023, we will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between our countries. So we hope to organize cultural events here in Malaysia as well, and let's see, maybe we will find some ways to cooperate with the Malaysian embassy in Helsinki. But this will of course be an important milestone for relations, and planning for this year and these events has already started.
Excellent. I think to note, I think you mentioned about the Independence Day on the 6th of December. which was celebrated virtually last year. Hopefully this year, Ambassador, if everything goes well, hopefully we can do it in a hybrid, physical, virtual format, so that Malaysians can appreciate and celebrate Finnish culture. Ambassador, I want to ask you an interesting question, because I think this is a question that when I talk to a lot of young people in the country, they look up to Finland for many reasons. Obviously, education system is one, but second is the leadership of the country. Your country, specifically your parliament, it has elected one of the youngest state leaders in the world, Miss Sanna Marin, when she was 34 years old. It is very young, Ambassador. Her cabinet has more women, some younger than herself, and than men. In fact, Finland has had two female prime ministers before Miss Marin. Is there something about Finland that that we need to know? Because how it is such a progressive country to have young and women leaders in the country. Could you maybe tell us something about the social cultural landscape about the country that has allowed Finland to produce such amazing young, vibrant and women leaders in the country's politics?
Sure. Well, I would have to, of course, this is an issue I'm always very pleased to talk about, and well, I would maybe start by saying that, of course, equality is one of the defining features of our society, and as you may know, Finland is also one of the leading nations when it comes to equality in the world, and I would even call us a global forerunner in this field. And if you look at various surveys thinking about equality, and these have been done by the World Economic Forum, or there's also some various gender indexes. So Finland is always ranking very high and very good, if not maybe usually in top 3 in the world concerning equality. So in a way that I think Finland was the first country in the world to give full political rights to women when you look into history. If I remember correctly, women got the right to vote already in 1906 in Finland. So equality is really an issue which is very valued and important element of the society, and we feel that it has also helped society to develop during the years. It's a social innovation which has really generated social renewal and prosperity in our country. And as you said, I think we have 19 ministers in the cabinet at the moment, and I think 11 or 12 of them are females. But also, if you look at our parliament at the moment, I think about the half of our parliamentarians or members of the parliament are women. Even if I look at my own house or own experience, I think half of the ambassadors of Finland today are female. And even if you look at even the foreign ministry, if you look at who is entering the ministry and starting their career in the diplomatic service for several years, or majority of them have been Finnish. And as you said, we have also had a female president as head of the state, President Tarja Halonen. I think Sanna Marin is she the third female prime minister we are having in Finland. We had a female defense minister as well. So it's very natural, and in a way that it's very deep in our society, and equality is something it's also a foreign policy priority for us, and an issue we try to promote globally, and it's also a task that my embassy and other embassies is actively promoting and wants to promote, and of course the rights of women and rights of girls is in the foreign policy a very important part as well. And in a way, if you think about one issue also, you mentioned the age factor. I think we have many young politicians and coming, and I think age is really not. It's more about competence and age. And I think it was already in the 1970s when the voting age in the elections was lowered to to the age of 18, so young people can vote as well. And they have been able to vote for a long time. And even every now and then there's even talk about that, whether we should lower the voting age to 16 from the 18, but it's 18 as of today. And when you look at Prime Minister Sanna Marin, I think she's one of the, there have been also recent surveys as well, and she has been in surveys in Finland as ranked as one of the most popular prime ministers in this century. And of course, her, in particular, her role and her government's role and achievements in combating the COVID pandemic have been really like respected. And we have been doing relatively okay, despite, of course, that the COVID has hit us hard. But like I would like to say that our response has been quite successful.
Such excellent points, Ambassador. I think it's so inspiring listening to your sharing. You mentioned about equality as a defining feature of Finnish society. And, you know, while you were elaborating, I just had a quick search online. And, you know, it's interesting when they describe Finnish values as egalitarian, focusing on equality, social justice, freedom, responsibility, honesty, and my favorite, voluntary commitment to promoting welfare. I think this is something that I think countries like Malaysia should aspire. One of our previous prime ministers looked to Japan for Asian values, but I think there's also value in us looking at the Finnish values, because I think it's so interesting. Because you also mentioned that you know, 1906 was the year where Finland gave women the right to vote, and it was the first country in the world to do so. You mentioned that half of the cabinet are women, half of the parliamentarians are women, half of the diplomats are also women. So it's a very interesting. And the point you mentioned about age is not about an age. Age is not a factor, but competence. And I think that's a very strong point as Malaysia itself looks into hopefully lowering and, you know, committing itself to lowering the voting age, which is already done, but hopefully it can go through all the way to actually make that happen, because the country needs more young leaders and more women to step up and take over the plate. And I think we can look to Finland for an inspiration for that. Ambassador, I just noticed that looking at the time, we've been chatting for more than almost 40 minutes. I want to ask you in terms of your call to action, sir. You know, what is your call to action for our audience, the business owners, the young leaders, the policymakers listening to this interview? What is your call to action for them when it comes to improving or furthering the Finland-Malaysia relations? And a follow-up to that is, what is the best way people can reach you or your embassy?
Well, thanks for this question, and thanks also for your kind words about Finland and our values. And I would also like, with reference to what you said, just one more thing I would like to point out, that is, of course, as well, that you may know that in quite many surveys, Finland has been also ranked by some surveys, Finland has been ranked as the happiest nation on earth. And that's probably, that could be also, there's no one reason for that, but that could also be related to the fact of our values and how people see the society and how our political system is working, and social justice and equality and nature. Of course, those kind of issues probably play a role there. But getting to your question and about call for action. Well, probably I would just like to end this talk we've had today about calling for open mind in exploring ways things are done in different countries and elsewhere, and also thinking about a little bit further away than just neighboring countries. And it has been said a couple of times that our countries are a little bit, are quite far away from, when you have a look at the map, there's a long distance between our countries. But I also believe that we are also close and faced by similar challenges like, and many of the challenges like climate change are today global in nature. They need global cooperation and global solutions. So I strongly feel that when our countries we are rebuilding our economies, and it's more important than ever that also Finland and Malaysia work closely together we'll find new ways to strengthen the partnership and cooperation in various areas. And I've been working with trade promotion for a long time, so I know that Finnish companies are sometimes a little bit careful to look into more distant markets, and maybe that's same thing to Malaysian companies as well. But I would like to encourage, of course, all companies and stakeholders in Finland and Malaysia to look further. Like sometimes the biggest and the best solutions and the biggest price can be a little bit further away, not just immediately in the neighboring countries. So, but it's been a true pleasure talking to you today, and we've touched upon many issues. And I mentioned our embassy as being a gateway to Finland, but I really just want to encourage like anybody to contact me personally or contact my embassy if you need any info about Finland, or if you have any ideas for cooperation. I strongly feel that me and myself and my embassy, we are here to help you, and we are always at anybody's service. So do not hesitate to contact me by any means or embassy. So thanks a lot for these talks, and thanks for having me in this series. It has been a true pleasure to join you this morning.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. It's been such an enriching talk. We talked about your background as a diplomat. We talk about your appointment as the ambassador of Finland to Malaysia, your top 3, or actually more than that, I think it was 4 priorities as ambassador to Malaysia. We talked about the historical ties between our 2 countries, noting also about the Finland president visit to Malaysia in 1995. We spoke about trade and economic relations when it comes to the presence of Finnish companies in Malaysia, education diplomacy between the 2 countries. We spoke about the cultural cooperation, and not forgetting that 6th December is the Finland Independence Day. So we look forward to the celebration that your embassy will be holding. We spoke about the Finnish
We'll be
culture.
happy to invite you as well to join us.
I look forward, sir. I look forward to it. We spoke about and I think this was a fascinating conversation we had about equality and how Finland is an equality power in the world, promoting equality everywhere and anywhere. And we spoke about your call to action, saying, I love when you said that the solutions, the best solutions may be out there in distant markets, and we should always keep an eye out because the world is too big for us to not explore. And Malaysia is never too far from Finland, and vice versa. We want to end with a note to our listeners or viewers. If you want to follow the embassy on Finland in Kuala Lumpur, go to Facebook and search for @Finnish Embassy Kuala Lumpur. You will find the Embassy of Finland in Kuala Lumpur. If you want to find more about the embassy website, you can head over to finlandabroad.fi/web/mys/mission. Don't worry about listening to this. The video will show the link below, so you can visit that link for more information. Or if you just want to see it, Google Finnish Embassy Kuala Lumpur, you'll find the link. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for joining us for our 4th Diplomatically Speaking With series. We look forward to speaking with you maybe in the future, maybe for part 2. Maybe we can talk more about the economic relations. We can talk about issues such as the EU-Malaysia Free Trade Agreement. We didn't have the chance to talk about that. Maybe we can even talk more about the Finnish culture and education system for us to deep dive. That could be a part 2 that we could explore with you. Until then, take care and stay safe, everyone. And thank you, Ambassador.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.